Okay, so here's the EVAP demonstrator setup, and we're going to go through, we're going to identify all the parts and pieces, and we'll go through in the order of the lab sheet. Now, if we look at the lab sheet, number one, the figure points down in this direction down here. This is actually our pressure sensor. So this is going to measure the pressure inside the fuel tank. It acts just like a map sensor. If you go in, you'll see we got 3 wires on there. We're going to have a power, a ground, and a signal wire coming back. And this is almost always going to be a 5-volt signal. I've never heard 5-volt reference. I've never seen anything other than that. So we got a pressure sensor in here. And we use this for testing. When we seal the system, it should be able to hold pressure. If there's a leak, this sensor will pick up on that change in pressure when it leaks out. Number 2 on the lab sheet is the solenoid. We go down here, we've got our vent control solenoid. We can see we got 2 wires coming in here. This vent opens and closes and allows the gases to leave through this tube down here. You can see down here, this tube. So as we put fuel into the EVAP canister, fuel vapors into the intake canister, fresh air is going to be forced out there. This solenoid controls that fresh air opening. This solenoid is going to be normally open. The fuel pressure will go into the canister. Those vapors will take the place of any fresh air that was in there, and the fresh air will go out. The charcoal will hold that fuel so it won't just leak out into the atmosphere. All right. Number 3 is the actual charcoal canister itself. Inside here we have activated charcoal that's going to store gasoline vapors. It can only handle vapors, it can't handle liquid. If we get liquid gasoline in there, it will damage the canister and there's no saving it. It's got to be replaced. Number 4 gets into our test points. These will not be on the car. This is just for the demonstrator. So we got our test points for our sensor, our pressure sensor. We can see 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to have the 3 wires, power, ground, and signal, and we'll see which one goes where. Over here we got the connections for the solenoid. Again, that solenoid, typical solenoid, 2 wires. So we got 2 connections for that. Down below we can see our individual leaks. Right now the valves are shut off, so we have no leak in the system. If I were to open either one of these valves, I can get a leak. So if I open this valve, it's going to give me a 40 thousandths leak. And that is a literal measurement. If I go down, you can see that pinhole on the end of the tap. That is a 40 thousandths inch pinhole. So right now, the valve is open. We have that much of a leak going out. Close that valve, open up this valve. Now on this side, we have a smaller opening. We've got a 20 thousandths leak. If we open both of them, we got 60 thousandths leakage. So we'll close those. Next thing we're going to be looking at, number 8, is our service port. That is identified by the green cap. So when you open up the hood, you're looking around, you see a plastic hose with a green cap on it, you know that's a service port for the EVAP system. When you open this up, there's typically going to be a Schrader valve inside, but not always. Number 9 is our purge solenoid. This allows the engine vacuum, which will be hooked up to this end. This is going to go right into the intake manifold. It allows that engine vacuum to pull the vapors out of the canister through that valve and takes them into the intake manifold to be burned. This solenoid is normally closed, so we have a block between the intake manifold and the emissions, the evaporative emissions. When we open that solenoid, vacuum is going to suck those gases out of the charcoal canister to be burned, and then we close the solenoid back up. Now this solenoid is going to be pulse width modulated, so we'll be able to open it a little bit, or we'll be able to open it a lot, all right, depending upon how frequently we open and close it. And we'll get to that into the testing. 10 is just our purge points. 11, we get into our controls. So we got 11 is our vent valve solenoid, turns it on and off. 12 is our alligator lead, which I have hooked up to a battery. You can see we got a 10 amp fuse hooked up to that. All right, 13 is our purge valve control. See if we can hear this. You can hear it getting faster and then slower and shutting down. We'll go about halfway, and that's where it's at its fastest. If I continue to rotate in the opposite direction, it slows down again, but here it's going to be open all the time. Open about 50% of the time, closed all the time. So we can have our control going on there. This switch is for the heater. We're going to actually heat up the fuel tank to build pressure. Again, this is not going to be part of a normal system. This is part of the testing on this apparatus. We're not going to have a heater in the fuel tank, at least not on a gasoline vehicle. Then we get into the actual heater itself. We look inside the fuel tank. This big box here is our fuel tank. Down inside here, all it is just a headlight. All right, so we got a halogen headlight, which is going to throw off a lot of heat. Most people are familiar with that, how hot these get. So if I turn this on, it heats up the air inside the fuel tank, and it's going to generate heat. Up on top, we have just a regular gas cap. All right, I want to make sure that that's on there tight, whoever was in here last. Okay. And then we've got the fuel tank. So we've gone through, we've identified the components of the system. If you need to fill it out, just rewind the video and go back and look at that.